Many students in the United States, especially the ones who have the privilege of attending schools with the resources to fund modern language programs, are often told that learning another language is a requirement, or it's a marketable skill set that will get you farther in the global economy. You know, your bilingual status, and I use that term very loosely, will help you be a more competitive candidate for a job, and it might be that shiny little gold star that makes your resume pop. And while that may be true, I don't really like to think about it that way. As an English speaker myself, which I'm sure you've gathered, I like to think of learning other languages, especially immersing yourself in that language, as a remarkable act of kindness for oneself and for others. So, how many of you guys, show of hands, watch Game of Thrones? Any GOT lovers out there? Yes. Oh, yes, right? The premiere. So, like half of you will get my reference, and the rest of you must live under a rock. I don't know. But essentially, learning another language is like the Game of Thrones of life. It has everything. You will encounter pretty much every feeling on the spectrum of human emotion when you do it. You can feel elated, confused, frustrated, and super angry within the span of minutes or seconds. So, for example, at my first dinner when I was studying abroad in Spain, at my first dinner with my host mom, I was looking to prove myself. We hadn't had the chance to talk very much yet, so she was really slowing herself down to make sure my roommate and I could understand her. And at one point, she asked me in Spanish, "Mi hija es peluquera. ¿Sabes qué significa peluquera?" Or, "My daughter's a hairdresser. Do you know what hairdresser means?" And myself, being insanely nervous, but also really wanting to impress her, very quickly and confidently responded, "Claro que sí, corta la piel de la gente, ¿no?" Which essentially means, oh yeah, she cuts people's skin, right? And yeah, I was getting piel, or skin, confused with pelo, hair. Definitely looked like a weirdo for a second. And my comment was met with a brief look of terror, but it was followed by my host mom's sweet smile and a nice big belly laugh. While that was probably one of my most favorite memories associated with learning Spanish, it wasn't as fun in the moment. I was mortified at first. Because you see, before going to Spain, whenever I made an error in an academic setting, and Spanish had primarily been an academic subject to me at that point, I would feel humiliated. I would get incredibly worked up and beat myself down, as I'm sure a lot of us have done, as soon as I got a second alone. My parents and teachers had always been so supportive of my education, but myself, I really wasn't. I had a pretty extensive track record of being way too hard on myself. And that's why this dinner was so unusual for me, because sure, I was really embarrassed at first, but after the next few minutes of my bubbly host mother's conversation and a very healthy serving of my first ever Spanish tortilla, my nerves were completely calm, and I eventually forgot all about messing up. And later that night, when I had time to sit and reflect on my silly little slip-up, I realized that I was able to get past the trivial embarrassment. I even laughed with her a little bit, and I learned something. And this was a type of self-reflection that I'd never really experienced before. I'd never been able to laugh at an academic mistake, and I'd really never been kind and generous enough to myself to take the time and say, hey, it wasn't actually that bad, you had fun, and you really learned something. And believe you me, by the way, that was not the last time I made a mistake in front of a Spaniard. I did it pretty much daily. I would get something confused, horribly mispronounce something, or have to ask for a translation on a daily basis for the first several months I was in Granada. But over time, I learned that it was okay, that I didn't look incompetent, and that it was all part of the journey that one takes when you really commit to immersing yourself in a language. My daily fumbles really often led to new friendships, having longer and deeper conversations with the person that I was speaking with, knowledge that I'll never forget, and honestly, a ton of laughs. So, as I got more comfortable and less inhibited with my Spanish, I was able to have very meaningful dialogue with the people around me. And obviously, of course, people that are native speakers of the language that you're trying to learn won't always be as accessible to you as they were to me. I had the privilege, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to another country and immerse myself in that language and culture, but we always don't have that opportunity. However, you can achieve a similar immersive effect with a lot more determination and by seeking out people and places wherever you are that are associated with that target language. So, for example, you can go online. There are tons of websites and apps specifically designed to connect language learners. You can trade your English skills for skills in the language that you want to learn, and you might even be able to craft a beautiful friendship at the same time. If you live in a community with people who speak languages other than English, which in the United States you very more than likely do, reach out to your local Spanish club or your Mandarin club, or just strike up a conversation with somebody. That's how I like to do it. With the increasing dominance of English around the world, it can be so easy and so tempting to just switch back to it whenever you feel uncomfortable or you feel like it's too much of a challenge, because it 100% is. But that's kind of the point of language immersion. It's to resist that urge, because that resistance doesn't just benefit you. Whether you are traveling, you're online, or you're in your own community, as an English speaker, truly trying to communicate in another language is often appreciated. Of course, I'm just speaking from my experience with Spanish and a tiny bit of Arabic, but in general, your effort to use another language as an English speaker demonstrates its value and legitimacy in your eyes. And not only that, it is also an effort to make the person that you're speaking with a little more comfortable, as opposed to having to accommodate the monolingual English speaker, which is something that happens all over the world far too frequently. And so in doing all of this, you might not save the world or, reverse the hegemonic nature of English, but you might just make somebody's day a little bit better. And that itself, done intentionally, is an act of kindness. So, through study abroad and making every effort that I could to replicate that when I got back home in the States, I was able to forgive myself, to be persistent and reflect on my progress, and ultimately show myself a little bit more kindness. And that kindness also came in the form of a deeper consideration of others and a genuine interest and ability to engage in cross-cultural communication. So when we're all looking for what's next, I encourage you guys to take the time to be kind and take the time to learn a language. Thank you so much.